Chapter 1561. Seeing that his attack had been blocked, the young man's face turned cold and he immediately roared in the direction of the attack. "Humph, you don't have the right to know my name." As this cold voice rang out in an instant. Boom! The strong wind that blocked the young man's attack suddenly shook. In an instant, the young man's attack blasted towards the young man at a speed countless times faster than before. The latter's face was aghast and he hurriedly tried to dodge. However, before he could do anything, the attack had already fiercely blasted on his body. With a bang, the young man's figure was instantly blasted away. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared behind the place where Luo Qingtong had been standing. The man's figure seemed to have walked out of the sky, where all living things were floating and sinking. The black brocade robe was inlaid with flowing cloud patterns, and the edges were embroidered with silver embroidery. The flowing clouds hung low, making the man's figure seem to have come from the ninth heaven. However, the piercingly cold blood-red eyes were like swords and sabers. Paired with his extremely cold and handsome face, it made people feel that he was like the king of hell who had stepped out of a boundless blood prison. In short, he was both an immortal and a demon. The two completely different auras were unified and integrated in the man's body. When people saw him for the first time, they couldn't take their eyes off him. It was a kind of magnificence that was indescribable with words. This amazing talent was unparalleled in the world. Xianxia. The moment she saw the man's figure appear, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up and she immediately cried out. "Humph!" Xianxia's face softly snorted. His eyes, which seemed to carry countless swords and sabers, swept across Luo Qingtong's face, but he didn't pay attention to her. He still remembered that Luo Qingtong had raised his cub as a pet. However, that was that. He was still very worried about Luo Qingtong. His gaze silently swept over Luo Qingtong's body. After confirming that there were no injuries on her body, the layer of ice in his eyes eased slightly. But soon, the coldness in his eyes gathered again. "Who allowed you to touch her?" His eyes were cold as he looked at the young man who was struggling to get up from the ground. The latter's face was filled with shock, and he coughed up blood as he crawled up. Yi Qianren's attack just now was able to injure him even through the defensive barrier on his body. The other party's strength was too strong. After all, that was a protective talisman bestowed by the valley leader himself. The valley master was a saint venerable expert at the peak of the venerable realm. The young man's face was aghast. He looked in Yi Qianxian's direction and didn't dare to say a word. He crawled up and ran outside. The other party was obviously Yi Jiu's helper. Based on the fact that he had tried to kill Yi Jiu, this mysterious man who had suddenly appeared would definitely not spare him. As he thought of this, he ran even faster. However, no matter how fast he couldn't be faster than Yi Qianxian. Chapter 1562. The aura was so powerful that it felt like Mount Tai was pressing down on him, and it immediately suppressed the young man where he stood. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't move an inch. This feeling was similar to when he used his own aura to suppress Su Yu and the others. This time he had a taste of it himself. Wait. Trapped in Yi Qianxian's aura, the young man finally panicked. "I'm from the beast-taming king's valley, you can't kill me." Before he could finish his words, Yi Qianren crushed the defensive barrier around his body with a cracking sound. "Beast-taming king's valley? This sovereign doesn't care about you." The man's voice was cold. Although his voice wasn't loud, it contained absolute power and dominance. He looked at the young man with cold eyes and threw him to the side. "Come here," he said to Luo Qingtong. "Huh?" Luo Qingtong looked at him in confusion, blinking her eyes. "What's wrong?" She walked to Yi Qianxian's side. He hadn't killed that man from the beast-taming king's valley yet. Luo Qingtong frowned slightly as she looked at the young man who was struggling to get up from the ground after his defensive barrier was crushed. At this moment, "Kiss this sovereign." Cough cough. Luo Qingtong suddenly choked on a mouthful of saliva. She looked at the man in front of her in surprise. If she didn't misunderstand, this man was asking her for a kiss? Did he become so open after going out to prolong his life? Looking at the expression on her face, Yi Qianren's face instantly darkened. "Don't you want to take revenge yourself?" He looked coldly at Luo Qingtong. His brows were tightly knitted. If it wasn't for this woman, he would have killed that man from the beast-taming king's valley at the beginning. He wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. "Oh." Luo Qingtong heard this and laughed. Her eyes curved slightly as she looked at the man standing opposite her with his hands behind his back. Her eyes were full of smiles. So he wanted her to kill this person. However, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly turned. She smiled at Yi Qianxian and said, Sure. However, I already have enough power in my hands, so I don't need to borrow your power. As she spoke, she saw the man's face darken even more in an instant. She couldn't help but laugh. Ah, I'm just kidding. As she spoke, her figure had already stuck close to Yi Qianming like a gust of wind. She raised her hand and hooked his neck down. Her lips pressed against his and her words disappeared between their lips. If you want me to kiss you, just say it. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes, looking like an evil and cunning cat. Her nimble little tongue went straight into Yi Qianming's mouth. The light in the man's eyes dimmed. Without saying anything, he raised his hand and clasped the back of her head. He took the initiative and overbearingly plundered her. At the same time, streams of aura flowed through Yi Qianming's body and into Luo Qingtong's body. Boom! Luo Qingtong licked her lips and smiled wickedly as she left Yi Qianming. Her body was already filled with Yi Qianming's aura and power. Heaven battling art. As Luo Qingtong shouted, the life and death sword in her hand suddenly burst out a peerless sword light. Chapter 1563. The latter was wrapped in Yi Qianming's aura and was unable to break free. When he saw Luo Qingtong's sword light flying towards him, his face was filled with despair. No. You can't kill me. He shouted hysterically, I have a trace of the Valley Master's aura and divine sense on me. If you kill me, the Valley Master will immediately sense your presence. You can't kill me. The young man didn't care about anything else at this moment. He immediately revealed his final trump card. As an elite disciple of the beast-taming King Valley, his status in the beast-taming King Valley was naturally not low. Otherwise, he wouldn't have received the amulet personally bestowed by the beast-taming King Guguju. On his body, there was a trace of the beast-taming King Guguju's aura and divine sense. Once he was killed, that trace of aura would completely erupt. At the same time, that trace of divine sense would also remember the aura of the person who killed him. In the future, the beast-taming King Valley would seek revenge and exterminate the other party. The beast-taming King Valley was this overbearing and arrogant. However, after hearing his words, Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianming's faces didn't change at all. Boom! Luo Qingtong's sword ruthlessly slashed at his body. The young man screamed as an extremely powerful divine sense and aura suddenly erupted from his body. Who killed my beast-taming King Valley's disciple? The divine sense's voice was abnormally furious. Then with a boom, the trace of violent and ferocious aura that it contained rushed towards Luo Qingtong's attack. In an instant, it was like a turbulent sea and like a volcanic eruption, violently rushing towards Luo Qingtong. However, Luo Qingtong stood there motionless. Boom! Just as the attack was about to hit Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian's figure suddenly appeared beside Luo Qingtong and raised his hand to pull her into his embrace. Luo Qingtong chuckled and snuggled into his embrace. At the same time, her head rested on his chest, looking extremely comfortable and relaxed. Sensing her relaxed posture, Yi Qianxian's expression softly snorted, but the corners of his lips curled up slightly. This woman was trying to rely on him. This was good. His lips curled up slightly, and then his eyes looked coldly at the oncoming attack in front of him. Boom! His right sleeve shook, and in an instant an extremely violent and ferocious attack was released. It was unknown how many times more powerful and terrifying it was than the attack that the other party had thrown at him. Annihilation. When Yi Qianren unleashed this move, the attack in front of him seemed to melt like snow that had met the sun. Ah! The divine sense hidden in the aura of power suddenly let out an extremely shrill scream. Then, as the attack dissipated, it also disappeared into thin air. In the hidden world, in a luxurious pavilion in the beast-taming King Valley, the beast-taming King Guguju, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and then spat out a mouthful of blood. Valley Master. The servants in the surroundings hurriedly surrounded him. I'm fine. The beast-taming King Guguju raised his hand to stop them from coming forward to help him. A trace of my divine consciousness was destroyed. His face was filled with shock, then he shouted sternly, immediately go and check the life tablets of the elite disciples and elders. Chapter 1564. Someone immediately hurried over to report. Valley Lord. Not good. Senior Brother Han's life tablet has been shattered. Hearing this voice, Beast Tamer King Guguju's expression instantly changed. For no other reason. The senior Brother Han, that this beast-taming King's Valley disciple spoke of was his most beloved disciple. Bastard. Beast Tamer King Guguju's face was filled with rage. Go and check it out immediately. Find out who dared to make a move against our Beast Tamer King's Valley. Once he found the culprit, he would definitely exterminate his entire family in 10 generations. Yes. The Beast Tamer King's Valley members hurriedly accepted the order and left. While Beast Tamer King Gu Guju was enraged, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up as she looked at Yi Qianxian's attack. She could feel that this attack was much stronger than the heaven-conquering art, stealing heaven's fortune she learned from Yi Qianxian. From the aura of this man's attack, it seemed to be of the same origin as the heaven-conquering art. Could it be another move of the heaven-conquering art? With this thought, Luo Qingtong's heart was suddenly filled with eagerness to try it out. She already knew the power of the heaven-conquering art, so she naturally knew how powerful this move that was created by this man was. She looked at Yi Qianxian with burning eyes and asked, "Qianren, what is this move called?" Luo Qingtong's eyes turned slightly as she approached Yi Qianxian with a smile. Crafty." Yi Qianxian looked at her crafty face and lightly snorted. This woman, only at times like this would she be unusually obedient and look like a harmless cat. Want to learn? He looked at the bright light in Luo Qingtong's eyes. Okay. The light in Luo Qingtong's eyes was crafty and she directly turned Yi Qianren's question into an affirmative sentence. Yi Qianxian looked at her and lightly snorted, but didn't say anything. Even if Luo Qingtong didn't mention this move, he was prepared to teach it to her. The girl's strength had now risen to the Saint Realm. The power and effect of the heaven-seizing move from before were not very great anymore. This move of annihilation was sufficient to allow her to face Saint Realm and even Saint Realm experts when she wasn't around. She might not necessarily be at a disadvantage. With this thought, Yi Qianxian immediately said, "Come with me." He was about to take her away, but Luo Qingtong, "Wait, I'll go tell Su Yu and the others some things." As she spoke, she left Yi Qianren's embrace and walked towards Su Yu and the others who were not far away. The moment Yi Qianren appeared, everyone was suppressed by the powerful aura emitted from his body, unable to move. Only after the battle had ended did he recover. "Mistress." Su Yu and the others looked at Luo Qingtong with excitement and tears in their eyes. Fortunately, their mistress was fine. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to forgive themselves. Chapter 1565. The man's strength was far beyond their imagination. The divine will attack that burst out from the young man's body was so powerful and terrifying. The group of people who were watching from afar were almost shocked out of their wits by the power contained within. It could be said that if not for Yi Qianxian's power lingering around them, restricting their freedom and protecting them at the same time, they would not have been able to escape. It was likely that more than half of them who were not strong enough would be killed by the powerful force of the divine sense attack. The remaining people would most likely be heavily injured as well. Even under such circumstances, Yi Qianren was able to completely destroy the divine will and attack with just a simple gesture. There was not a single trace of it left behind. In this way, how would the people of the beast-taming King's Valley know that Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian had done it? The man's strength was so strong that it was beyond their imagination. The Blackfield's reputation as the supreme overlord was indeed well-deserved. The group of people looked at Yi Qianxian with respect and fear. Even the way they looked at Luo Qingtong was the same. Even more than that. Not for other reasons but because Luo Qingtong was their master. Moreover, to be able to obtain the protection of the Blackfield's Mingzun was not something an ordinary person could do. No matter what, at this moment, they were extremely fearful of their master, Luo Qingtong, and they wanted to submit to her. "You all go back with them." Just as Luo Qingtong was instructing Su Yu and the rest, Yi Qianxian's voice also rang out at this moment. Bei Qing, who was hiding at the side, rushed over and heard it. "From today onwards, Wild City and even the entire western wilderness will only have one master." That was Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianxian's voice was faint, but the meaning in his words was unquestionable. Since Luo Qingtong did not want to stay under his wing, then he would help her to pave the road ahead for her. Yes. Bei Qing, Feng Yu and the others understood and immediately agreed. Then they concealed themselves and left with Su Yu and the others. As for Luo Qingtong, she walked towards Yi Qianxian. The man wrapped his arm around her waist and disappeared with a wave of his sleeve. Far West Wilderness, Savage City. A group of clans and forces that were not strong enough were looking in the direction of the sage monarch's tomb from above the city wall, guessing in their hearts who would be the biggest winner in this trip to the tomb. They did not dare to send people to investigate, lest they be treated as people with ulterior motives and dealt with. However, no one had expected that the tomb would suddenly collapse while they were still looking at it. It really collapsed. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked ahead. Smoke and dust filled the air as far as their eyes could see. Waves of rumbling sounds rang out continuously. They could not believe their eyes. Oh my God! The tomb had collapsed. Everyone was shocked. At this moment, someone suddenly reacted. Ha ha ha. The sage monarch's tomb has collapsed. Doesn't that mean that all the people inside are dead? That person let out a long laugh and suddenly flew into the air, flying towards the city. Looking at his departing figure, the people around him suddenly came to their senses in an instant. That's right, the sage monarch's tomb had collapsed. If there were no accidents, all the people inside should be dead. Chapter 1566. After all, after losing so many powerhouses and masters, even a top family would become as weak as a small family. With that thought in mind, everyone was overjoyed. Ha ha ha. God is on our side. I didn't expect such a good thing and opportunity to happen even though we didn't manage to enter the tomb. Not only did we manage to survive, but the properties and heritage of these powerful family forces will also belong to us. Everyone was overjoyed and returned to their respective families. They gathered their forces and headed to the families that had gone to the tomb to plunder. Family who was the first to be targeted. After all, among all the families that had gone to the tomb, family who was the weakest. However, the resources and heritage they had were comparable to the top families. Under such circumstances, everyone naturally had their eyes on it. Family whose people. Open the door. Everyone gathered their forces and teams and headed to family who. They surrounded the people that had stayed behind to guard family who. Hand over all of family whose properties and heritage and we'll spare your lives. Especially that Yi Jiu's things. The eyes of the forces that had come to surround family who flashed with greed. Most of them had come here for family whose properties and heritage. Secondly, they were here for Luo Qingtong's elixir. The elixir that Luo Qingtong had taken out at the Sage Monarch's Tomb Convention was shocking. Even if family who didn't have such an elixir, it would be best if they had other extremely effective elixirs. They knew that Hu Zhongtian and his son, Hu Fei, were saved by Yi Jiu. As for the people that had stayed behind to guard family who, the people from these forces sneered coldly. They would kill them all after they got the elixir. To prevent future trouble. After all, Yi Jiu's background was mysterious. Who knew if there were other forces behind her? If they got the news and wanted to avenge her, then they would all be in trouble. Everyone's eyes were vicious. The people that had stayed behind to guard family who were cold. Dream on. There was a group of heavenly diabolism's men among those who stayed behind. Luo Qingtong was afraid that the Hua family and the Ouyang family would play dirty tricks after she left, so she left a team of Tianxia's men to guard the family who. At this moment they were facing the people who had come to besiege family who. Their faces were cold and stern. She wanted her master's things? Dream on. You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Then wait for your deaths. Seeing that the people guarding family who were not moved by their words, the people who came to besiege family who were instantly enraged. They waved their hands and shouted, "Attack! Let them die without a complete corpse." Following their shouts, the group of people charged towards family who. In the dark arena. After a steward reported the news, he asked, "Chief, should we send someone to help family who?" "No need." Chief Steward Cheng's expression was indifferent. The reason they had helped family who before was because of Yi Jiu. Now that the Saint King's tomb had collapsed, they didn't know whether Yi Jiu was alive or dead. If he had really died in the Saint King's tomb, they had no need to help family who. Moreover, Luo Qingtong had only used the guest elder token once. The reason why he helped the other party was because the other party's literary skills were truly outstanding and extremely valiant. Chapter 1567. Originally, when he reported Yi Jiu's information to the headquarters, they were very interested and prepared to send someone to contact her. Who would have thought that something would happen to her so soon? With that thought in mind, Chief Steward Cheng immediately waved his hand and prepared to dismiss the steward. Right at this moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed as if he had sensed something. He abruptly turned his head and looked in the direction of the city gate. This is... His eyes were slightly startled. Then with a sudden movement he leaped out. Bang! In the family who, the group of people who had surrounded the family who were attacking one another. Beams of light shot out from their hands one after another. In an instant all kinds of attacks were launched at the people guarding family who. The heavenly diabolism's people immediately took out their spiritual chi guns. At the same time they released the Gu Mother. This was something that Luo Qingtong had specially left for them before she left. Anyway, in the Saint King's tomb, the Gu venomous insects could only play a limited role against the powerhouses of the Hua clan and Ouyang clan. It was better to leave them for those who stayed behind. This way, if the Hua clan and Ouyang clan were to play any dirty tricks, they would have a way to deal with it. However, Luo Qingtong probably didn't expect that these goo worms were not prepared for the Hua family and the Ouyang family, but for these people who came to besiege them. Buzz. As the goo mother flapped its wings, countless goo worms flew out at its call and flew towards the people charging towards it. This time, many of these unguarded family clans and forces fell into the trap. Many people were directly swarmed by the goo worms and were instantly devoured into a pile of bones. Some people had their brains invaded by goo worms, and they started rolling on the ground and slashing at each other like crazy. The scene was in chaos. Damn it. Looking at the scene in front of them, the patriarchs of the various forces who organized the siege had ugly and furious expressions on their faces. All of you get out of the way. They shouted and attacked at the same time. With a boom, the strength and aura they poured in together enveloped all the goo worms in front of them. Then they shouted angrily, "Everyone attack together. Let's see how long these family who people can last. Later, I will skin all of them alive and hang them on the city gate." These family who people were really stubborn. They were courting death. However, just as they finished speaking before the others could respond, they heard an extremely cold and furious voice from behind them. "You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Really? I will do my best to satisfy your requests." As he spoke, sounds of attacks rang out one after another. In an instant, the screams of the people from the various families and forces could be heard everywhere. The masters of the forces who controlled the goo worms also turned their heads as if they had seen a ghost when they heard the voice. Hu Zhongqian. Everyone looked at the group of people who had appeared behind them in shock. Hu Zhongqian, Hu Fei, Suyu, and the others looked at them with cold and stern expressions. Then Suyu suddenly waved his hand and ordered coldly, "Attack! Kill them all. These people deserve to die. How dare they attack family who while they were not around?" Chapter 1568. Hu Zhongqian and the others were not dead. Didn't that mean that Yi Jiao and Yu Si Huang were still alive? Oh my god. Only then did everyone realize what kind of disaster they had caused because of their greed. But how was this possible? The Sage King's tomb had collapsed. How could they not be dead? Even if they were not dead, they should have lost more than half of their forces and suffered heavy losses, right? However, no matter how these people looked left and right, Hu Zhongqian and the others were no different from when they left. It was as if they did not go to the Sage King's tomb and the tomb did not collapse. What was going on? The crowd was scared out of their wits and hurriedly tried to escape. However, Hu Zhongqian and the others surrounded them as soon as they came back. How could they let them escape? A group of people attacked together and killed them all. The scene in the other families was more or less the same. When the family clans that had pledged their loyalty to Luo Qingtong returned to Wilderness City, they found out that their forces were besieged. Instantly, they rushed back to their respective family clans angrily. Seeing them return, the small and medium families and forces that had participated in the siege were all scared out of their wits and hurriedly tried to escape. There were also some small and medium families and forces that did not have time to act. They hugged the legs of the strong people who had returned and cried and begged for mercy. Outside the Qin family's residence, a group of mid-level families and mid-level families trembled and prostrated themselves in front of the Qin family's head and kept kowtowing. "Qin family's head, please spare our lives. Qin family's head, please spare our lives. We are willing to pledge our loyalty to you and help you deal with family who. Yes. We know that you hate Yi Jiao." At the Sage King's Tomb conference, he embarrassed all of you and made you lose the opportunity to share the map with the Hua family. Now that the Sage King's Tomb has collapsed Qin family's head, you all came back alive and be the co-owners of Wild City. The crowd desperately kowtowed and begged for mercy. At the same time, they kept saying things to please Qin family's head. However, the latter had already pledged his loyalty to Luo Qingtong. When he heard these words, he was instantly furious. The young man's strength was unfathomable. His ability was strange and extraordinary. He also had the Blackfield's Mingzun to protect him. Not to mention that after Patriarch Chen was saved by Luo Qingtong, he only had gratitude towards her and no hostility. Even if there was, he was completely convinced by Luo Qingtong. At this moment, when he saw these people slandering Luo Qingtong and threatening to help him deal with family who, he immediately lifted his leg and kicked them out. "Shut up. You want to attack the young master? Why don't you take a look at yourself and see if you have the guts to do so?" As he spoke, he shouted sternly, "Young master is our master. From now on, young master will reign supreme in Wildland City. But those who don't obey will die." As Patriarch Chen's voice rang out, The middle-ranked patriarchs who were vomiting mouthfuls of blood in midair instantly widened their eyes. Their eyes seemed to be about to pop out of their sockets. What? Yi Jiao was family head Chen's master? And Yi Jiao would reign supreme in Wildland City from now on. Then wouldn't Ouyang family's head and the others be doomed? Oh my god. What exactly happened in the Sage King's tomb? Why did Patriarch Chen and the others change so drastically? Everyone was shocked to the extreme and almost fainted from the shock. Chapter 1569. In the dark-colored arena, Chief Steward Cheng's figure was just about to rush out when he was stopped by someone. On the orders of my master, we are here to inform the dark-colored arena. From now on, Yi Jiao will be the master of the entire Wild City and even the entire Western Wilderness. Do you have any objections? Bei Qing, Wind Feather, and the others were suspended in the air above the dark-colored arena. The aura around them was released, suppressing everyone present. Everyone in the dark-colored arena had a change in expression. Oh. Chief Steward Cheng's pupils shrank when he saw the black field symbol on Bei Qing, Wind Feather, and the others. People from the Black Field? Master? Black Field Ming Zun? That Yi Jiao actually knew Ming Zun? And he was so protective of him? His heart was pounding like stormy waves, but on the surface, he maintained a calm expression. We, the dark-colored arena, have no objections. From now on, we are willing to listen to Ninth Young Master's orders. He cupped his hands towards Bei Qing, Wind Feather, and the others. In his opinion, the strength of the latter was unfathomable. Even the few special envoys from the headquarters were probably not inferior to him. There were actually such powerhouses under Ming Zun's command, and there was more than one. The other party's influence and strength were second to none even in the hidden world. Why did they stay in the secular world of the Sky Spill continent and never go to the hidden world? Chief Steward Cheng was shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. Bei Qing, Wind Feather, and the others glanced at him. Seeing that he was so tactful, they immediately retracted their aura and disappeared into the air. The dark-colored arena was the biggest obstacle for Luo Qingtong to unify the Western Wilderness. Since the other party had agreed to follow Luo Qingtong, then there was no problem. Of course, if the other party didn't agree, then they could only take action and completely erase it from the Western Wilderness. As for the power behind the dark-colored arena, not to mention their master, they didn't even put them in their eyes. After Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others left, General Manager Cheng raised his head. His back was drenched in cold sweat. You guys stay here. I'll go back and report this immediately. The power of the Blackfield's Ming Zun was unfathomable. He had to change his attitude towards Yi Jiao. Moreover, Chief Steward Cheng was very suspicious. Yi Jiao was evil Dr. Ghost Eye. After all, other than that exceptional young man, Ming Zun of the Blackfield had never been so protective of anyone. The other party must have changed his appearance and came to the far west wilderness. If that was the case, then their attitude towards Yi Jiao had to be carefully considered. With that thought in mind, Chief Steward Cheng left in a flash. While Wildland City was in chaos, Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian arrived in front of a cliff and deep pool. It was a huge, naturally formed pool. Above the deep pool, a waterfall that was about 1,000 feet high was violently washing down from the top. Then it flew straight down and disappeared into the huge, deep pool that was hundreds of meters in diameter. The water splashed up to tens of meters high. Luo Qingtong looked at Yi Qianxian. The latter put her down and walked to the deep pool. Then he turned around and said to her, "Watch carefully." As he spoke, he waved his hand. "Annihilate." As the man's voice rang out, in an instant, the pool of water that was several meters deep evaporated into thin air. It really evaporated. Chapter 1570. The moment Yi Qianxian waved his hand, the water in the pool disappeared without a trace. Luo Qingtong didn't even see his movements clearly. And this was under the condition that she had activated her ocular technique. Just how strong was this man? Luo Qingtong couldn't help but glance at Yi Qianxian. The latter was turning to look at her with his hands behind his back. "Did you see it clearly?" "See clearly, my ass." Luo Qingtong felt gloomy. She looked at the man in front of her. This man was definitely doing it on purpose. With his strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to slow down for her to see. Was he doing it on purpose so that she could ask him? Luo Qingtong's eyes turned slightly, and then the corners of her lips curled up. Fortunately, her ocular technique had the ability to look back. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly, and the bloody light in her eyes flickered. Soon, the scene of Yi Qianxian making his move appeared in her eyes. But compared to other things, she could only see Yi Qianxian's movements for an instant. In just an instant the scene immediately shattered. But this was enough. Luo Qingtong watched as the light in Yi Qianxian's hand swept into the pool. Then, with a boom, the pool water boiled violently as if some compound had been thrown into it, and then disappeared in an instant. Oh, a change in power? Luo Qingtong's eyes replayed that moment over and over again. She saw Yi Qianxian's movements and the effect of the light and the pool water. Suddenly she tried to ask. It was like ice melting into water when it met fire, and then continued to evaporate into steam. It didn't disappear, but its form was changed and it blended into the air. Yes. Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong, and the light in his eyes flickered slightly. He didn't expect Luo Qingtong to see through it at a glance. He had already thought about what he would ask Luo Qingtong to do when she came to ask him. He never thought that she would be able to see through it so quickly, and even comprehend the principle behind his attack. How many more surprises could this girl give him? Yi Qianxian looked deeply at Luo Qingtong, then nodded and said, "This move, Annihilation, changes the nature of the opponent's power to make his attack disappear." As he spoke, he raised his hand to demonstrate to Luo Qingtong. All the powers in this world are interconnected. As fire, water, earth, although their shapes are different. But they are made of the same thing, and that is spiritual qi. Luo Qingtong's voice sounded at the same time as his, and she smiled. "I got it. Let me try." She looked eagerly at the deep pool in front of her. What Yi Qianxian had said might be very difficult for ordinary martialists to understand. However, Luo Qingtong was born with the mixed yuan body. Moreover, what Yi Qianxian had said was, to a certain extent, similar to the fusion and decomposition of chemistry in the 24th century, as well as the composition of molecules. It was very easy for Luo Qingtong to understand. However, in an instant her thoughts turned and she soon had some vague ideas. Okay. Yi Qianxian nodded and walked to the side without stopping her. Boom. Luo Qingtong walked to the edge of the pool, and the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand emitted a blazing light in an instant. Then she raised her hand and waved, "Annihilation." As she shouted, an incomparably pure white light suddenly swept out from her long sword. With a boom it sank into the pool below. Chapter 1571. Boom boom boom. Luo Qingtong blasted out this move. In an instant, the water that had just poured into the bottom of the pool from the cliff's waterfall began to boil. Then, under the incomparably purifying white light, it was annihilated inch by inch. All the pool water that came into contact with the purifying white light disappeared in an instant. Although this scene was not as shocking as when Yi Qianxian had just used it, it was still enough to shock people. Not only that, after the annihilation of the pool water, the purifying white light emitted by Luo Qingtong was also strengthened. It suddenly grew by nearly 10 meters in width and length. With a boom, it blasted into the pool water that had just poured back into the bottom of the pool. In an instant, it stirred up countless splashes and hung down like a waterfall. Swish. Seeing this scene, Yi Qianxian's eyes suddenly burst with an extremely intense and scorching light. His eyes, which were like swords and sabers, were instantly focused on Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong had changed his move. This annihilation attack had been improved by Luo Qingtong. The attack that should have been annihilated had been changed by Luo Qingtong into her own strength and strengthened her own attack. It made the sword light she unleashed even more valiant. Not only had Luo Qingtong learned his attack, but she had also improved it. The powerful perception and extraordinary potential displayed in this move caused Yi Qianxian's heart to surge. He looked deeply at Luo Qingtong. This was the woman his heart was attached to. Even if her strength was still shallow, she was not covered by his brilliance. She was a woman who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The peerless pearl he held in his palm had already begun to slowly fade away. The dusty object on her body was blooming with an unattainable light. Yi Qianxian's sharp eyes were deep. He looked at Luo Qingtong and said slowly, "Supreme immemorial body." In this world, only this supreme saintly body, which was almost on par with his heavenly pulse body, could transform the power of an attack. He was pleasantly surprised by Luo Qingtong's physique. In the future, Luo Qingtong would catch up with him even faster. And Luo Qingtong nodded, then looked at him with narrowed eyes. "How is it? That move of mine just now?" Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up as she looked at Yi Qianxian, waiting for his answer. "Very good, I've grasped the essence." As Yi Qianxian spoke, he saw the corners of Luo Qingtong's lips curl up. She looked at him with a smug expression. He snorted coldly and raised his hand to grab her. "But you can't use it casually in the future. This move is too much of a burden on your body." Before you reach the Saint Realm, if you use it too many times, it will damage your foundation. As he spoke, he raised his hand to wipe away the blood that had faintly seeped out of Luo Qingtong's sword-wielding hand. That was because the strength of this move was too strong. Luo Qingtong's body could not withstand it, and some of her meridians had been ruptured and blood had seeped out. Using this kind of attack once or twice was fine. If it was used too many times, it would definitely cause harm to Luo Qingtong's body. It would inevitably affect her advancement in the future. And Luo Qingtong responded in a low voice. She looked at the man who was lowering his head to wipe away the blood on her hand. Her heart suddenly moved and she called out, "Yin Bao?" As he spoke, he even spread out his other hand. Just like when she and Yin Bao played the game, "You tell me to raise my claws." Chapter 1572. What are you doing? He clenched his teeth and looked at the girl's tender white palm in front of him. Just a little bit more. Reflexively, he put his hand into the pocket. Fortunately, he controlled himself. No. Luo Qingtong looked at him and blinked as if nothing had happened. I just suddenly thought of Yin Bao when I saw you. As she spoke, she carefully observed Yi Qianxian's expression. However, the latter's face was cold and she couldn't see anything. What a pity. Luo Qingtong felt a little regretful. The time she spent training Yin Bao was too short. Otherwise, she would be able to see whether Yi Qianxian was Yin Bao or not. Now that the man didn't react, she didn't know if he suppressed it himself or if she guessed wrongly. As Luo Qingtong thought this, her eyes turned slightly and she asked Little Pig in her mind, "Do demons have any special characteristics after they turn into humans?" That depends on the purity of the demonic energy in their body. Little Pig was taking a nap in her 9-layered exquisite pagoda when he was inexplicably awakened by Luo Qingtong's voice. He then replied with a baffled expression. The little golden mouse at the side was jumping around it. Little Pig was dazzled by its movements. He raised his little hoof and smacked it down. Then he continued to answer Luo Qingtong's question. However, under normal circumstances, unless it's a demon with an extremely impure bloodline, there won't be any differences after a demon takes human form. Unless it just transformed, there might still be some traces left on its body. Little Pig said, "Why are you suddenly asking this?" This was the second time this woman had asked it about the demon clan and its transfiguration. Could it be that she's preparing for that white ball's transformation? Thinking of this, Little Pig immediately said, "You don't have to worry about Whitey. As the divine connecting beast, it's still far from being able to transform. Moreover, it's a demonic beast, not a demon. These are two completely different concepts. You'll understand in the future. It won't be easy for Little White to transform. However, if it can really take human form, then it would really be a blessing," Little Pig said as he rubbed his chin with his little hoof. When it wasn't so despicable, it was quite reliable. After all, Luo Qingtong wouldn't know about these things if it didn't tell her. "Alright, I got it." Luo Qingtong withdrew her thoughts and fell into deep thought. Could it only be seen if the bloodline was not that pure? Otherwise, it could only be when he had just transformed into a human. Yi Qianren definitely wasn't the same as when she had just turned into a human. And with his strength, if he really was a demon, his bloodline would not be impure. So unless Yi Qianxian admitted it himself, there was no way to find out? As Luo Qingtong thought about this, she suddenly felt a little depressed. Suddenly, her eyes caught sight of something. Then her eyes instantly lit up. "I got it." She felt a burst of joy in her heart. Then she pretended to lose her balance and fell into Yi Qianxian's arms. When she called out Silver Bao's name, the latter's face was cold and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. This woman was actually suspecting him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. Otherwise, she really would have seen through him. Yi Qianxian thought about his silly appearance when he transformed into the silver fox and gritted his teeth. His cold eyes became even colder. No matter what, he would not let Luo Qingtong know that he was Silver Bao. "All right." He wiped the blood off Luo Qingtong's hands and was about to get up. Chapter 1573. Ouch. Luo Qingtong fell into his arms. Yi Qianxian subconsciously reached out to stop her. His right hand was holding Luo Qingtong's hand, so he used his left hand to stop her. Seeing this, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly flashed. She raised her hand and grabbed the man's left hand. Then she pretended that her hand had slipped. She grabbed the Shifang dragon ring on his left ring finger and slid it down. Crack. She took off the Shifang dragon ring and held it in her palm. Ah. Luo Qingtong looked at the Shifang dragon ring in her hand and blinked. She took it off? Luo Qingtong was so surprised that she forgot to stabilize her body. She really fell on Yi Qianxian's body and pressed Yi Qianxian, whose left hand was grabbed by her, under her body. The two people fell on the edge of the pool. Yi Qianxian's luxurious cloud brocade robe was stained with mud. Luo Qi. Being pressed under Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian's forehead was bursting with blue veins. He didn't even call out Luo Qingtong's real name. This woman, what the hell does she want to do? Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth and looked at Luo Qingtong. Only then did the latter come back to her senses. Cough. My mistake. Luo Qingtong hurriedly got up from Yi Qianxian's body. However, when she bumped into Yi Qianren, her loose hair tangled around Yi Qianren's golden crown. When she got up, she instantly pulled her scalp and the two fell together again. Oh. Yi Qianxian had already sat up, but Luo Qingtong fell back again. He had to suppress his body's protective reaction to avoid hurting Luo Qingtong. He didn't have time to stop her. In an instant, Luo Qingtong fell on him. What's worse was that because he was getting up, Luo Qingtong fell and sat on his crotch. In an instant, Yi Qianxian let out a muffled groan. The girl's soft buttocks sat on his avatar. If the person sitting on him wasn't Luo Qingtong, she would have been sent flying. She wouldn't even know how she died. Luo? This time Yi Qianxian's voice was filled with anger and pain. He gritted his teeth and looked at the woman who had fallen on him and was messing with her hair. Because of her actions, Yi Qianxian's body was rubbing against Luo Qingtong's body. Yi Qianxian felt that he would go crazy if he endured any longer. He raised his hand and brushed away the golden crown on his head. His black hair instantly fell down like a waterfall. At the same time he got up and flipped, pushing Luo Qingtong under his body. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to tempt this sovereign? Yi Qianxian's blood-red eyes were 30% enduring and 70% burning. His extremely handsome face and long hair fluttering around him made him look like an immortal, a god, and a demon. Cough cough. No. Absolutely not. Seeing the dark fire in the man's eyes that was about to jump out, Luo Qingtong desperately suppressed her desire to flirt back and hurriedly shook her head. What a joke, I can't play anymore. If I keep playing, this fire won't be extinguished. Humph. Yi Qianxian's face was cold. He snorted and was about to say something when he suddenly felt something strange on his left ring finger. Chapter 1574. Why did you take off my ring? He stared intently at Luo Qingtong and pressed his body down again. This woman still hadn't given up. She was still suspecting that he was Yin Bao. What was it that gave her the feeling that she was Silver Bao? Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth. He really wanted to flip this woman over and beat her up. But he couldn't bear to. Haha. Luo Qingtong laughed dryly. No, it was a mistake, she said resolutely. She would never admit that she suspected that this man was Yin Bao. Yi Qianxian was such an arrogant person. If he knew that she suspected that he was Yin Bao, he would probably be so angry that he would slap Yin Bao to death. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she quickly retorted. But Yi Qianxian really wasn't Yin Bao. Luo Qingtong was a little disappointed. She had been guessing that the 10-directional dragon ring couldn't be taken off, just like her 9 netherworld phoenix ring. If that was the case, then there was an 80% chance that Yi Qianxian was Yin Bao. In the end, the ring could be taken off. Luo Qingtong felt depressed. When Yi Qianren saw the expression on her face, she snorted coldly. The light in her eyes flickered slightly. The 10-directional dragon ring was the same as the 9 netherworld phoenix ring. It couldn't be taken off once it was worn. But he and Luo Qingtong could take off each other's rings. If it wasn't for this, his identity as Yin Bao would have been exposed. Thinking of this, Yi Qianren immediately gritted her teeth fiercely. This woman really couldn't be spared from worry at all. She was even able to link him and that little fox together. If she really found out that he was Yin Bao, then what would happen? Are you done with your mistakes? Yi Qianxian looked coldly at the 10-directional dragon ring in her hand. Cough cough. That's enough. Luo Qingtong handed the 10-directional dragon ring back to Yi Qianxian and pretended not to understand his words. Yi Qianxian snorted coldly and put the 10-directional dragon ring back on. Then he stood up and pulled Luo Qingtong up. If you miss that little fox, I'll get Bei Qing and the others to bring it back for you. Yi Qianxian's expression was indifferent. He had to put an end to this woman's suspicions that he was Yin Bao. When the time came, he would let Bei Qing and the others pick a few fox demon beasts that were extremely similar to young heavenly fox. That way she wouldn't think that he was Yin Bao. Oh. Hearing this, Luo Qingtong felt even more disappointed. If Yi Qianxian said this, then it seemed that Yin Bao really wasn't him. Luo Qingtong also wondered if she had been possessed. Why did she keep thinking that Yi Qianxian was Yinbao? One was clearly a human and the other was a fox. And Yinbao was so cute and adorable. Other than that pair of eyes and awkward temperament, there wasn't a single bit of similarity between her and Yi Qianyun. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she stopped harping on this matter. She looked at Yi Qianxian and asked, "Where did Yinbao go?" When Bei Qing and the others came, they only said that you wanted to bring it back. They didn't say what it was for. Luo Qingtong was still very concerned about Yinbao. Yi Qianxian snorted coldly. Seeing that she cared so much about Yinbao's young fox form, he felt inexplicably unhappy. Its parents are looking for it. Chapter 1575. He made up his mind. When he found the silver fox that could replace Yinbao, he had to train it well. He couldn't let it pounce on Luo Qingtong for no reason. In particular, he couldn't be too intimate with Luo Qingtong. Thinking back to when he was still Yinbao, Luo Qingtong liked to hug and kiss him when she had nothing to do. Yi Qianxian's face darkened. At that time he was Yinbao, so he didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He was even happy that the girl was so intimate with him. If it was another silver fox, when Yi Qianren thought about that scene, a bloodthirsty impulse rose from the bottom of her heart. She wanted to tear the other party apart. Luo Qingtong didn't notice Yi Qianxian's expression. Hearing that Yinbao had gone to meet its parents, she immediately nodded in understanding. "Okay, when it's ready you can bring it back," she said with a smile. "I even made a lot of toys for it. There's also a little cape," Luo Qingtong said as she took out the little thing she had made for Yinbao. Seeing the dazzling array of things in her hands, Yi Qianxian's face darkened even more. He had tried most of these things before. Luo Qingtong had only changed the style and pattern. Thinking of his dark past, Yi Qianxian's face darkened. He made up his mind that he absolutely couldn't let Luo Qingtong know that he was Yinbao. Just as Luo Qingtong was excitedly pulling Yi Qianren aside to show him the things she had prepared for Silver Bao, in a dark corner of the holy capital of the Great Yong dynasty, there was a commotion. A figure wrapped in black clothes looked in the direction of the Great Yong dynasty city gate with a deep and dark gaze. "Master, will the method you mentioned really work?" A cold voice sounded from the figure. Her voice was extremely clear and pleasing to the ear. But at this moment, because it contained too much hatred and viciousness, it caused the voice to become sharp and gloomy, causing one to feel extremely uncomfortable. It was as if someone was scraping the floor with something sharp. Just listening to it made people shudder from the bottom of their hearts. Of course it's useful, but that method is too insidious. It's a forbidden evil technique. If you use it, you will have to pay a terrible price. Moreover, if you're discovered to be using such a forbidden evil technique in the future, you'll suffer the wrath of the entire outer realm. You also said it's the outer realm. The figure's voice was cold. No one here will be able to tell what kind of forbidden evil technique I'm using. What's more, with my current appearance, can it get any worse? As he spoke, the figure abruptly lifted his cloak and veiled hat. In an instant, a shocking scene appeared before everyone's eyes. It was a face that was too horrible to look at. A huge wound almost split his face in half, extending all the way to his neck and even below his collarbone. The flesh and blood on the wound were all over the place, revealing white bones. It looked extremely horrifying. Her face, which originally looked very noble and beautiful, was now like that of a demon. Chapter 1576. The Saint King's tomb collapsed. She was possessed by the green smoke and controlled her body. She used the power of the blood demon vine's explosion to escape the Saint King's tomb and luckily escaped. But the wound on his face and body couldn't heal no matter what. Xuanhuan and Qingyan tried their best to treat it, but they couldn't make this huge wound heal even a little bit. Not only that, but the wound also contained a force that constantly eroded and stimulated her wound. Xuanhuan was almost driven crazy by this wound. Not only that, this wound also cut through the meridians in her body. Because this wound couldn't heal, her meridians couldn't heal. At this time, Xuanhuan was no different from a half-cripple. And all of this was thanks to evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Xuanhuan clenched her teeth in resentment. Even if there was a slight chance that she could regain her previous strength, she would not give up. Not to mention, the method that Qingyan told her could not only restore her strength, but also let her go to the next level and become stronger. She would never let go of such an opportunity. Even if she had to pay an extremely tragic price, she had to get it. Good. The wisp of green smoke said in her mind, "Then go. Remember, you must be careful in the future. Don't let people find out about the forbidden evil technique on you. Otherwise, you and I will suffer together." The green smoke originally didn't want to teach such a forbidden technique to xuanhuan. However, after it chose xuanhuan as the person it carefully selected, it was destined to be with the other party. One's glory, one's loss, all's loss. Xuanhuan had become like this now and was about to be completely wasted. If it didn't teach her this method, would it become a waste together with her and sink into the sky spill continent? It wasn't willing. The reason it chose xuanhuan was not to be trapped in the sky spill continent for a lifetime. So it had to teach this forbidden technique to xuanhuan. It only hoped that after she obtained this method, she would be more cautious in the future and not be discovered by others. Fortunately, this method was something he had obtained from a secret place in the ruins. Ordinary people would not know about it. As long as xuanhuan was careful, no one should be able to discover him. Alright. Xuanhuan's gaze was ruthless. Looking in the direction of Great Yang's holy capital's main gate, she put on her veiled hat and cloak again. With a leap, she rushed forward. From now on, she was going to be reborn and be reborn. Evil Dr. Gui Tong, you didn't expect this, did you? Not only did you fail to kill me in the Saint Monarch's tomb, but you also died. Now that the Sage Monarch's tomb has collapsed, you have absolutely no chance of surviving. Henceforth, in the entire Sky Spill continent, no one will be able to compete with me. In an instant, a certain figure who was riding on the wall and was about to sneak away froze. Yanxi. Old Master Luo looked at Empress Dowager Yanxi who was walking straight over. He immediately gritted his teeth and said ruthlessly, "Let me go. Great Yang's men are about to attack. In fact, I have never loved you. Before, I wanted to be with you again because I coveted the power and status of the Great Chu sacred dynasty. Now that Great Yang's men want to catch me, of course I have to escape. I advise you to let me go quickly. This way both of us can have a way to live, otherwise what?" Empress Dowager Yanxi looked at him with a sneer and said, "Luo Tong, you've grown bold. You even dare to lie to me. Escape? I think you're going to die, right?" Chapter 1578. Get the hell down here. I don't need you to protect Great Chu for me. This man left so quietly because he didn't want to embarrass her, nor did he want to implicate Great Chu. However, she had worked hard for Great Chu all her life, and she was worthy of the late emperor and Great Chu. This time she wanted to be willful. This man, she would never allow him to leave. She would not allow him to go out and die for her and Great Chu. No. After Empress Dowager Yanxi finished speaking, Old Master Luo immediately cried out. He didn't want to implicate Yanxi and Great Chu, so he wanted to leave. How could he stay any longer? But soon he found that he had spilled the beans and hurriedly corrected himself. Humph. Yanxi, you vicious woman, don't try to trick me into staying to die. I must go. And you don't pester me so shamelessly. I already said that I don't love you. Those words I said before were all to coax you. Before he finished speaking, Empress Dowager Yanxi's sneering voice sounded. Is that so? Even after you drugged me this morning, you cried in my ear and said those mushy words of farewell, were they all fake? Do you want me to repeat your mushy words of love here one by one? Bang! As soon as Empress Dowager Yanxi's words sounded, Old Master Luo fell from the wall in an instant. What? You heard all of it? Old Master Luo's handsome face was red. He was simply too ashamed to see anyone. The words of love he said to Empress Dowager Yanxi were mushy to the point of breaking through the sky. He had never said such mushy and disgusting words in his life, and she actually heard all of it? Weren't you drugged by me? Old Master Luo's face turned red for a while. He couldn't believe this fact. What he used was the bewitching medicine given by Tong Tong. How could it not work? Empress Dowager Yanxi sneered. Don't I have an antidote for the medicine Tong Tong gave you? This stupid man. Empress Dowager Yanxi didn't want to talk to him anymore. She just waved her sleeve. Come, help Empress Dowager up and go to the Golden Hall. This time she was going to be completely willful. As for this man, she would settle the score with him after this matter. If it couldn't be settled, then they would settle this score in the underworld. Anyway, in this life she would never let him go. Swish. Empress Dowager Yanxi waved her sleeves and strode towards the Golden Palace with a group of internal guards and attendants. There, a group of courtiers of the Great Chu court were waiting. Buzz? Above the great golden hall of the Great Chu sacred a group of the court dowagers. Empress Dowager, Empress. Her expression was cold and dignified, and her bearing was gentle and beautiful without losing any of her lofty stature. She was dressed in an extraordinarily luxurious court robe of the Empress Dowager. As her sleeves danced, she seemed to have the demeanor of someone who was above the clouds. She walked up step by step. Old Master Luo was escorted behind her by a group of guards and was finally forced to sit beside her. Old Master Luo was a little anxious and wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Empress Dowager Yan Shi. The latter didn't look at him, she only scanned the hall with a pair of sharp eyes. Chapter 1579. Translations. In the past 40 years I've never slacked off. Everything I did was for Great Chu. I'm willing to exchange my life for Great Chu's peace. But this time I want to be willful. I don't agree to Great Yong's request. Do you have any objections? Empress Dowager Yan Shi's words were powerful. She had devoted her life to Great Chu and was willing to sacrifice her life to protect Great Chu. But Luo Tong couldn't. Her granddaughter couldn't either. If Great Yong wanted to touch them, they would have to step over her dead body first. We have no objections. As Empress Dowager Yan Shi's voice sounded, all the officials in the Golden Hall were stunned for a moment before they all prostrated themselves on the ground, expressing their willingness to support Empress Dowager Yan Shi's decision. Especially the old officials who supported the young emperor with Empress Dowager Yan Shi. They naturally knew how much Empress Dowager Yan Shi had racked her brains for Great Chu. Without the Empress Dowager there would be no Great Chu today. Now that the Empress Dowager had issued an edict, they would naturally support her willfulness. Moreover, the Luo family and Luo Qingtong had been kind to them. They had to repay this kindness. We are willing to obey the Empress Dowager's order. Good. Empress Dowager Yan Shi suddenly stood up, her sharp eyes piercing through the hall, towards the border between Great Chu and Great Yong. Deploy the troops. Prepare to fight Great Yong. When Empress Dowager Yan Shi gave the order, Great Yong's letter of credence had arrived in the Golden Hall of the Empire of Qin. Looking at the vermilion handwriting on the letter, the officials of the Empire of Qin were all arguing. Some were in favor of handing over Luo Qingtong and all the people related to her, so as to avoid a war with Great Yong and damage the country's strength. After all, Great Yong had stated in the letter of credence. As long as Luo Qingtong and the others were handed over, Great Yong would also compensate and apologize for attacking the Empire of Qin. Under such circumstances, wasn't it better than going to war with Great Yong? But Grand Tutor Jiang and the others opposed it. At this moment, the door of the hall was opened with a bang. A figure that was brimming with vitality and vast power strode into the hall. I want to protect Luo Qingtong. As this steady and clear voice rang out, the surrounding noisy voices were instantly startled. Grand Tutor Jiang and the others turned around in surprise. Your Highness, Your Highness. All the courtiers knelt down. Logically speaking, in front of the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin in the Golden Palace of the Holy Dynasty, Ma Chunyi, even if he was the crown prince, could not make his ministers kneel in front of the sage emperor. However, the current Ma Chunyi was no longer the Ma Chunyi of the past. The young man was dressed in an elegant green robe. He was calm and elegant, and the aura around him was domineering. The aura that surrounded him seemed to take the shape of an azure dragon. It seemed to be roaring at the heavens as it let out a soft cry. Ma Chunyi walked in step by step. The dragon aura around him seemed to resonate with the entire Golden Palace. Saint Realm. Dragon transformation. Grand Tutor Jiang and the others were pleasantly surprised. The scene that Ma Chunyi was experiencing had never appeared in the royal family of the Empire of Qin. The Empire of Qin's royal family inherited the power of the true dragon. It was rumored that the ancestor of the Empire of Qin's royal family had a brief love affair with a woman who had transformed into a true dragon. Since then, the power of the true dragon had been passed down in the royal bloodline. Every generation of the royal family of the Empire of Qin would awaken the bloodline aura that carried the power of the true dragon. Chapter 1580. Translator. Atlas Studios. However, no one expected that the power of the true dragon in his body would be so dense that his aura could transform into that of a dragon. This meant that Ma Chunyi's power of the true dragon was so strong that he might be able to cultivate the body of a true dragon one day. Under such circumstances, everyone naturally had to bow down and worship him. I, as the heir to the throne of the Empire of Qin, the descendant of the true dragon, decide to protect Luo Qingtong and the others. We will fight Great Yong. Ma Chunyi's words left no room for refutation. With the richness of the dragon's aura in his body and the might of breaking through to the Saint Realm, even the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin couldn't refute his words. After all, in the history of the Empire of Qin, There was only one suspected to be a true dragon. We will do as the crown prince says. The sage emperor of the Empire of Qin said in a deep voice, reply to Great Yong. The Empire of Qin will not hand over anyone related to Luo Qingtong. If they want to fight, then let's fight. Yes, your majesty. The minister who received the order quickly walked out. However, Ma Qianye's heart didn't relax. He furrowed his beautiful eyebrows and looked worriedly in the direction of the far west wilderness. He knew that Luo Qingtong was the evil Dr. Ghost Eyes. Great Yong made such a big move, but why didn't the other side in the black field react? Did something really happen to Luo Qingtong? The Grand Principal of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin was also worried. I owe this child of the evil doctor. She didn't want to go at first, but she insisted. Is this good? Did something happen? My little sweetheart. The Grand Principal paced back and forth in the principal's office, occasionally clutching his chest and crying out in pain. Luo Qingtong was the trump card in junior that he had high hopes for. Now something had happened. The Grand Supreme Dean beat his feet and stomped his chest. He hated himself for not trying to stop Luo Qingtong earlier. Yet he had to succumb to her tyranny and approve her leave. Are you all right now? Did something happen? The Dean of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin couldn't stand it anymore. He hurriedly said, Master, you can't keep pacing here like this. It's better to hurry to His Excellency Mingzun and let him see how Luo Qingtong is doing. The Dean of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin said. Actually, he still didn't quite believe that something had happened to Luo Qingtong. Considering how much that person cared about the young girl. If something were to happen to Luo Qingtong, then the entire eastern domain, no, the entire Sky Spill continent would be swallowed up by the wrath of that lord, destroyed. How could Great Yong be arrogant? However, just as he finished speaking, the Grand Supreme Dean's pacing movement instantly stopped. Then he looked at him and suddenly let out a long sigh. AI. Do you think I haven't contacted Underworld Sovereign? Ever since I learned of Great Yong's revolt, I've sent over a dozen messages over 1,000 li. Asking about Luo Qingtong. However, as he said this, he sighed and shook his head. None of them responded. All of them were like stones sinking into the sea. The Grand Supreme Dean's expression was dignified. He also didn't want to believe that something had happened to Luo Qingtong. However, Yi Qianxian cared about Luo Qingtong so much that he was willing to come to the Empire of Qin to be an instructor. How could he turn a blind eye to Luo Qingtong's matter? There was only one possibility, and that was, something had really happened to Luo Qingtong. An underworld sovereign was looking for her. That was why their communication was cut off. What? Chapter 1581. The Dean of the Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy paled. Those who had not reached their level would not understand how terrifying Yi Qianxian's strength was. If something really happened to Luo Qingtong, then the consequences would be, sigh, let's do our best and leave the rest to fate. The Grand Supreme Dean sighed and shook his head. He did not expect to be able to stop Yi Qianxian's anger. In fact, he was also depressed about Luo Qingtong's accident. The Empress of Great Yong Xuanhuan. The Grand Supreme Dean gnashed his teeth. Luo Qingtong's accident was definitely related to her. The Four Academies Conference is about to begin. At that time, I don't care if you are the Empress of Great Yong or not. I will beat you up first. She dared to attack his student. The Grand Supreme Dean's protective and unscrupulous character acted up again. Not to mention that Luo Qingtong was his most promising junior and student. Even if she wasn't, he quite liked that little girl's evil and domineering character. Not to mention that Luo Qingtong said that she would treat his injury. The Grand Supreme Dean had been looking forward to this for a long time. Now that his student was in trouble, there was no way to treat her injury. How could he let Xuanhuan off so easily? Let those little fellows in the academy pack up their things. We are going to the Sacred Academy of Great Qi. In this year's Four Academies Grand Gathering, I must beat down all those people from Great Yong. Tell them to beat them to death. There is no need to show mercy. Especially that Xuanhuan. Let Ma Qianyi beat them to death. The Grand Supreme Dean said angrily. The Four Academies Conference did not care about your identity. Everything was based on strength. The Dean of the Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy responded and went to prepare. In the Great Yong Sacred Dynasty, Xuanhuan was inspecting the students of the Great Yong Sacred Academy below. These people were all outstanding talents of the Great Yong Sacred Academy. Moreover, it was someone she had chosen. Xuanhuan taught these people the forbidden evil technique that Qingyan had taught him. He watched as they sacrificed their loved ones to gain strength. Each and every one of them increased their strength to an extremely powerful level. He nodded in satisfaction. Very good. During the 4 Academy conference she was going to kill all the geniuses of the other 3 sacred academies. A bloodbath at the 4 academies assembly. From now on, Great Yong would reign supreme in the eastern region. Especially those from the Empire of Qin and Great Chu. Xuanhuan sneered. Thinking back to the replies he had received regarding the 2 dynasties. They didn't even hand over a single person. Good. Very good. At that time she would surely torture and kill all the genius experts of the 2 dynasties. Let's see how long they can protect Luo Qingtong and the people related to her. Especially Luo Qingtong. Chapter 1582. Translations. Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian had been staying at the bottom. They didn't know how Yi Qianxian found this place. The spiritual energy inside was abnormally rich. Luo Qingtong later discovered that the water and rocks were not ordinary water and rocks. These rocks were abnormally hard. Because they had been immersed in these spiritual energies for a long time. Both the water and the stones contained a dense amount of spiritual energy. And these spiritual energies were all purified and could be directly absorbed by warriors for cultivation. Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian stayed at the bottom for a long time to consolidate their strength. This was because the speed of her strength improvement was too fast. Although before the Saint Realm, she was enlightened by the power of the Saint King Realm powerhouse and then took the Saint Realm flower to advance to the Saint Realm. These 2 methods didn't have any hidden dangers and didn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. But because her strength improved too fast, her foundation was inevitably a little shaky. Especially in the Saint Realm, Luo Qingtong's understanding was far from solid. Originally, she was going to leave the secret chamber of the Saint King tomb and meet up with Su Yu and the others, then go back and consolidate for a period of time. But she didn't expect Su Yu and the others to be captured by the people of the beast-taming King Valley, and then Yi Qianxian came again. With such a strong and bottomless man by her side to guide her, Luo Qingtong naturally didn't worry about her strength not being stable enough. While absorbing the spiritual energy at the bottom of the cliff, she comprehended and consolidated her strength under Yi Qianxian's guidance. Soon her aura stabilized at the peak of the Saint Realm, close to the level beyond the Saint Realm. Her aura was so strong and solid that she only needed to wait for the next opportunity to break through and perfectly advance to the level beyond the Saint Realm without leaving a trace of hidden dangers. The improved version of annihilation in Luo Qingtong's hand was also becoming more and more perfect after a few days of practice. Boom! Luo Qingtong blasted out the sword in her hand. In an instant, the water in the entire spirit pool began to decrease at an extremely fast speed. And the white light from Luo Qingtong's hand also became more and more intense. Then, with a boom, it heavily blasted into the bottom of the pool in an extremely violent and powerful state, splashing a wide curtain of water more than 10 feet high. The power of annihilation in Luo Qingtong's hands was more than twice as powerful as when she first learned how to use it. Boom boom boom. The water in the water curtain fell from mid-air, forming a violent scene in the deep pool like the impact of a waterfall. All right. Looking at this scene, Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. She raised her hand and put away the life and death yin and yang sword. She looked at the man beside her and said, "Qianren, shall we go?" They had been here for a while and didn't know the situation in Wild City. But with Su Yu and Yin Yang taking care of things, Luo Qingtong was still assured. She was going to take a look at Wild City. If there were no problems, she was ready to leave. After all, the time for the grand meeting of the 4 academies was approaching. Luo Qingtong had to rush back to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, so as to avoid the Grand Dean nagging her again. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she thought of this. Yes. Chapter 1583. In Desolate City, Bei Qing and Feng Yu's expressions were grave. How is it? Still can't sense the traces of Master and the evil doctor? Bei Qing paced back and forth in the room irritably. They had already received the news from the Black Field. There was a great change in the eastern region. Great Yong had sent troops to Great Chu and the Empire of Qin just to find trouble with Luo Qingtong and the people related to her. They wanted to report this to their master immediately. However, they didn't know where he and the evil doctor went. They took turns to sense Yi Qianxian's breath every day. They sensed that their strength was about to collapse, but there was still no news of Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian. They were so anxious that they were about to explode. No. Feng Yu's voice was serious. He had just finished a round of sensing. Yi Qianxian's strength was very strong. Even if their strength and cultivation methods were taught by him, they could sense Yi Qianxian's existence with special methods. However, there were some special areas that they couldn't sense. Yi Qianxian should be in such a place with Luo Qingtong. This was troublesome. Feng Yu's face was serious. If Master and the evil doctor stayed in that place and didn't come out, as he was thinking, his eyes suddenly focused. Master. His figure flashed out in an instant. Master's breath had appeared. Bei Qing hurriedly followed. Swish. Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian just appeared outside the cliff in the deep pool. They were about to leave. At this moment, the air was distorted. In an instant, Bei Qing and Feng Yu's figures appeared. Master, the evil doctor. Their voices were urgent. They knelt on the ground as soon as they appeared and reported, something happened in the eastern region. Everyone in the Yong royal family died suddenly. Xuanhuan went back to inherit the throne. Now he sent troops to Great Chu and the Empire of Qin to ask them to hand over all the people related to the evil doctor's original identity. The army has already set out for Great Chu. What? Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. Xuanhuan? He didn't die? He went back to inherit the throne of Great Yong. Now he attacked grandfather and others? Thinking of Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi in the Chu sacred dynasty, Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. The blood-red light inside exploded in an instant. Viciousness and killing intent suddenly rose from the depths of her eyes. Xuanhuan, you're courting death. Luo Qingtong's figure flashed out in an instant, heading towards the east region. Master. Bei Qing and Feng Yu raised their heads and looked at Yi Qianren. The latter's eyes were also cold. It was not because of Feng Yuan but because of Luo Qingtong. This woman. Yi Qianxian looked down at his suddenly empty arms. The veins on his forehead suddenly throbbed. Couldn't she rely on him more? She left just like that? Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth. Order the 18 cities of the Black Field to send troops, he said coldly. They dared to attack Luo Qingtong. He wanted there to be no more Great Yong in this world after today. Yi Qianxian raised his hand and threw out a Black Field token. It was his supreme token in the Black Field. He was the only one who could use this token. With this token he could use the power of the Black Field at will. Bei Qing and Feng Yu were anxious because without Yi Qianxian's command and token, even if they knew that Great Chu was in danger, they couldn't mobilize the power of the Black Field to help. Yes. Chapter 1584. And Luo Qingtong, after rushing forward for a long distance, suddenly remembered that she had forgotten Yi Qianxian. Oh my. Thinking of Yi Qianxian's proud temperament, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched fiercely in an instant. Forget it. She raised her hand to support her forehead. After this matter was over, she would coax him well. Thinking of the man's cold face and awkward angry appearance, Luo Qingtong's eyes showed a trace of a smile. But soon, this trace of a smile solidified into coldness in her eyes again. Xuanhuan. Luo Qingtong sneered and looked in the direction of the Great Chu and the Empire of Qin in the eastern region, and the aura around her fluctuated more violently. Swish. She raised her hand and released the earth-level spiritual ship from her waist ring, and her figure flashed and swept up. Buzz. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and slapped the earth-level spiritual ship. In an instant, the acceleration inscription patterns that Luo Qingtong had previously drawn on its body lit up one by one. Then the spiritual ship, like a flash of lightning, rushed toward the eastern region. Eastern region. At the border of the Great Chu Sacred Dynasty and the Great Yong Sacred Dynasty, the important town of Yan City. Empress Dowager Yanxi was dressed in military attire. She was dignified and capable, and there was a towering beauty in her gentleness. She stood on the fortified city wall that was dozens of feet high, and her eyes were fixed on the clouds of dust raised by the army rushing in the distance. Luo Tong. Empress Dowager Yanxi's voice was heavy. I have received great kindness from the late Emperor of the Great Chu. This mobilization of troops is the only time in my life that I will be willful. But, she suddenly turned her head and looked deeply at old Master Luo beside her. I can only be willful this time. The people of the Great Chu can't be in an abyss of suffering because of me, and they can't be homeless because of me. As she spoke, she straightened her body and raised her head slightly to look at the resolute and cold man in front of her. After more than 40 years, he still looked the same as when she first met him. This was good. She had no regrets. Empress Dowager Yanxi's gaze was deep. She said in a low voice, "It'll be fine if Great Chu wins this battle. If you lose, Then you and I will go to the Yellow Springs together in this strategic border city of Great Chu. She would not release this man, nor would she hand him over to Great Yong. He let Xuanhuan, who obviously hated him, torture him. But she could not let the entire Great Chu sacred dynasty die because of her selfishness. Therefore, if they could keep the enemy out of the border in this battle, then they would live. If not, Great Yong's army would knock on the gates of Great Chu's strategic border towns. Then, the imperial edict she left in her palace and the imperial edict of the late emperor that she asked to leave the palace could be put to good use. She would die with him as the old madam of the Luo family and the wife of Marquis Jinghua. From then on, they would follow each other in life and death. The only thing that worried Empress Dowager Yan Shi more was Luo Qingtong. But her granddaughter was in the empire of Qin's sacred dynasty. And in the sacred dynasty of the empire of Qin, the true dragon crown prince of the empire of Qin was said to have stood his ground against all opinions and wanted to protect Luo Qingtong. The response letter arrived at Great Yong almost at the same time as Great Chu. In this way, Empress Dowager Yan Shi was completely relieved. The empire of Qin was much stronger than Great Chu. Chapter 1585. If he said he wanted to protect his granddaughter, then Qingtong would definitely be safe and sound. When the Four Academies' grand meeting was held, with Qingtong's strength and potential, she should be able to stand out from all the disciples of the Sacred Academy. At that time, if she was chosen by the sects in the hidden world, even Great Yong couldn't do anything to her. Empress Dowager Yan Shi thought and felt that she had nothing else to worry about. But she didn't know that Luo Qingtong was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. If she knew, she wouldn't be worried about these things. However, old Master Luo wanted to tell her before, but he was too busy to do so. Now there was no need to say anything. Old Master Luo knew that if Luo Qingtong was here and knew that Great Chu was in such a crisis, she would definitely not sit idly by. But now she and Blackfield didn't do anything. It only meant that something had happened to her. And was Great Yong so arrogant because something had happened to his granddaughter? Old Master Luo's eyes were filled with tears. He looked at Empress Dowager Yan Shi in front of him. This woman had always been resolute and decisive. He didn't want to make things difficult for her before, so he wanted to leave. Now that something had happened to his granddaughter, he only wanted her to be well. At the same time, he knew how much she valued Great Chu. But she was unwilling. For him, she went against her original promise. The only time she was willful was to protect him. Old Master Luo knew how difficult it was for Empress Dowager Yan Shi to do this. Okay. He hugged the woman in front of him with a trembling voice. If we lose, we will go to the Yellow Springs together. He had missed half of her life. This time, he wouldn't miss it again, right? Old Master Luo originally thought that if he lost, he would knock Empress Dowager Yan Shi out and let the guards take her away. He would voluntarily walk out and let Great Yong's people take him away. He and Yan Shi kept their previous matter a secret very well. Except for themselves, no one knew that Yan Shi was his former wife. The world thought that he had become the Empress Dowager and was with Yan Shi because he had contributed to Great Chu. After he was taken away by Great Yong's people, Yan Shi could still be the Empress Dowager of Great Chu, honorable and noble. But now old Master Luo changed his mind. Since this woman wanted to die with him, then so be it. It was better to die together than to live alone. It would also save her the trouble of not being able to find him when she looked for him again. Yes. Empress Dowager Yan Shi grabbed his sleeve tightly. Right at this moment, boom boom boom. The sound of an approaching army could be heard from the front. Great Yong's vanguard had already arrived. Great Yong's banners fluttered in the wind. Large batches of Great Yong soldiers flooded in from all directions towards the strategic town of Ku City. Soon they had completely surrounded the strategic town of Hengqing from all directions. Violent and ferocious auras converged and soared into the sky in an instant. Empress Dowager Yan Shi's eyes were sharp. She turned her head abruptly, staring at the rows of soldiers as she coldly waved her hand and said, "Soldiers of Great Chu, raise the flag." As Empress Dowager Yan Shi's voice sounded, in an instant, the flag of the Great Chu rose above the strategic town of Yan City. Flying Phoenix flag? Empress Dowager Yan Shi is here. A few voices faintly came from the Great Yong army. Then someone looked up to the sky and laughed. Ah, I didn't expect that Empress Dowager Yan Shi of Great Chu, who has been iron-blooded all her life, couldn't pass the test of a beautiful man. For a marquis from a small inferior country of the Empire of Qin, she is actually willing to personally lead an army to the border. Chapter 1586. As the voice rang out, in an instant, a figure suddenly shot up from the Great Yong Army's square formation and appeared in front of everyone. Surpassing the Saint Realm? Seeing this figure appear, the eyes of Empress Dowager Yan Shi and the others instantly froze. Not for anything else but for a general, the peak of the Saint Realm was already the limit. In the 4 great sacred dynasties, surpassing the Saint Realm was already at the level of the Guardian Realm. After all, other than the Saint Realm experts who were their final trump cards and rarely used, surpassing the Saint Realm was already the highest level of combat power that the sacred dynasties could use. What was surpassing the Saint Realm? For example, Grand Tutor Jiang of the Empire of Qin was an old minister of 3 dynasties and an important minister who had almost all the power in the court. His strength was surpassing the Saint Realm. Another example was the Grand Principal, who controlled the Sacred Academy of the Empire and had countless talented disciples in the sacred dynasties as his students. He was only surpassing the Saint Realm. Then there was the Grand Marshal of the Empire of Qin, Meng Bai, who controlled all the armies in the world, who was only surpassing the Saint Realm. Experts surpassing the Saint Realm were also very few in the 4 great sacred dynasties. Everyone in the world knew about them and all of them were in high positions. But now, this person who was obviously a general of Great Yong's vanguard had also surpassed the Saint Realm. How was this possible? When did Great Yong's national strength become so powerful? Saint Realm was rare and surpassing the Saint Realm was even rarer. How could they casually cultivate experts surpassing the Saint Realm? If that was the case, why did they use such a shameless and dirty method to seize the throne of Great Chu? Even in the Empire of Qin's sacred dynasty, they used a scheme to murder the true dragon crown prince of the Empire of Qin? Empress Dowager Yan Shi and the others had grave expressions. What caused their hearts to sink even more was that as this person's voice rang out, a series of long laughter rang out one after another. Great Chu's Empress Dowager Yan Shi is naturally unusual. She doesn't even like our Great Yong's 7th prince, but as the Empress Dowager, she was willing to marry the Marquis of a small country and lead troops to the border for him. What's the big deal? Perhaps, that person's martial arts are better? Following these provocative, cold, and mocking voices, one figure after another suddenly emerged from Great Yong's phalanx, appearing at the side of the general who had just spoken. Saint Realm, Saint Realm. Surpassing the Saint Realm. Another expert who had surpassed the Saint Realm. No, there was more than one. Empress Dowager Yan Shi looked at the row of generals in front of her, especially the 3 experts who had surpassed the Saint Realm. Her heart instantly sank. The Yong's army strength of Great Chu. 3 experts surpassing the Saint Realm and dozens of the Saint Realm. The overall strength of this vanguard army was almost as strong as the entire army of Great Chu. What instant Dowagers Yongs? Yong, Great Yong's Imperial Yong's Yong. Yong Emperor, S Yong, Emiaf Yen Yong. Could it be that all of this was related to him? No wonder they dared to attack both Great Chu and Great Qin. With Great Yong's strength, they indeed had the capital to wage war against them at the same time. Empress Dowager Yan Shi, who had originally hoped that xuanhuan would be afraid of the alliance of the 2 empires and retreat after putting on a show, felt her heart turn cold. As for Great Chu's generals, seeing the strength of Great Yong's generals in front of them, their hearts couldn't help but sink and feel shocked. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.